Welcome back to Views with Hughes, Jennifer News. This is Jerome Hughes, and as you all can see, I have WDW Pro with me. WDW, thank you for being here, and glad to have you join me at this time.
Well, I'm excited to be here. It's quite the honor.
Hey, it's the honor for me because you're the one that inspired me to get into YouTube, they're on broadcasting on pop culture news as well as current events and everything because of the fact that with the work that you've done with thatpopplace.com as well as your contributions to various other content creation channels on YouTube. Okay, so if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be in this right now. Okay, so all the thanks is to you.
Well, that's fantastic. I did not know that going into this video with you. What was it about what I was doing that inspired you that you wanted to do this?
Oh, not only the fact that you got all the insiders and everything to give you different things and coverages about what they heard and everything, but it's like the fact that you're unbiased. You want to make sure the bias is not there. You want to give it to everyone unfiltered. Also you're transparent because of the fact that you let it be known that it's speculation or rumor so far, and later on it's actually been confirmed. Okay,
Sure,
so I want to go ahead.
yeah, well, so one of the other things I try to do, and sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm less so, but I always try to find the meaning in whatever I'm reporting on. So, you're always trying to find the positive spin of it, even when I'm being critical of something, but which
Hmm.
is necessary sometimes. It's not because I want to criticize for the sake of destroying or being a curmudgeon or overly skeptical or what have you, but
Yeah.
rather what I'm trying to do, and sometimes better and sometimes worse, but I'm attempting to aim higher. And so whenever I see that something isn't what it could be, I want us all to recognize, hey, Star Wars is not where it could be. Let's go back to where the highest point we could imagine would be, and let's shoot for that. Let's stop shooting for something that's tremendously lower. And we see that throughout Hollywood, that we have diminished where our aim is, and that's not a good place to be.
Right, right. And I agree. And to add to that, it's like also enough for like if it comes to like the restructuring of various, corporations like Disney and for example, with the sub corporations like Marvel Studios or even Lucasfilm, if there was to be a replacement for the head, we'd hope for someone who is not only, in tune, who claims to be in tune with, the lore itself as well as the comics, but also as our fans, as well as looking to go back to what they once were before, if not to go ahead and get a better twist on it without any, approval for the Hollywood elites and everything.
I, I think the best thing when it comes to directing a studio, directing a property,
Mhm.
is that you have someone at the top who respects what made this thing successful to begin with.
Oh yeah.
One of the biggest troubles we have right now is we have people with egos that are so large that they take over something like a Star Wars, or they have been in charge of a Marvel, but then they decide that they are the source of the success, not the source material. And then as
Oh
a
yeah.
result of that, they begin to believe that they can mold it and move it into sort of uh, uh, a social experiment that will work simply because they're the one involved, and that's not true. These
Right.
properties they're magical because they speak to us in a way that other properties don't. If that weren't the case, then everything we ever watched would just be as potent and powerful and poignant as the next thing. That's
Right.
not what happens, though. There's a reason that people are so deeply touched by Star Wars. There's a
Mhm.
reason that people are so deeply touched by any number of their favorite shows. And
Oh
so,
yeah.
to be the most successful with those shows, you have to drill down and find out, what is it? What's the secret sauce in this that is making it resonate in the minds of so many? And once you figure
Right.
that out, then you embrace it because it's special.
Oh, indeed, and I agree. And to add to that, kind of like what happened with Ike Perlmutter and Kevin Feige with Marvel Studios, and then with Kathleen Kennedy. And I'm starting to think about this, like maybe it's like she's taken over like as a sort of revenge of like how she was treated back in the earlier days with Indiana Jones and everything back in the 80s and stuff. She want to possibly, and I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong on this. And it's like could be showing that it's time for a woman to go ahead and step up and show how to do it. Except for the problem is that we've had women who actually want to have these kind of roles as leaders of different companies, but Kathleen Kennedy is one of the many bad examples of that.
Well, I think that Kathleen Kennedy's big mistake is that she doesn't understand why people love Star Wars. And
Mm-hmm.
because of that, she takes it and she uses it as a vehicle for the things that she wants to see in the world.
Right.
And that would be fine, except that this is a multi-billion dollar property and it already resonates with so many fans. They have an expectation. And so then when you come in and you transform this, then
Mm-hmm.
you turn it into just any old space opera that Disney could have had for free. They could have invented their own space odyssey, their own sci-fi adventure. They didn't
Yep.
need Star Wars to do that. You bought it for Luke and for Leia and for Han and for Obi-Wan and 3PO and R2 and all of these fantastic characters. You bought it for the philosophy that undergirds the property. And when you take it and you dissolve all those things away and you turn it into something modern that fits your modern tastes, it's no longer what it was. You've taken away the things that made it special and unique. Coming back to Feige, though, we
Yep.
learned in the last 48 hours that Marvel really is in trouble. Disney also, because, well, Marvel is their golden goose. And so some of the things that we've learned are that they're delaying a lot of projects. We had reports out that Disney Plus is cutting content.
Oh yeah.
Specifically, they're cutting Marvel content. That's
Mm-hmm.
expensive to make. And if you look back at the Nielsen ratings for 2022, what you'll find is that in all of the subcategories that Nielsen reports on, there's not a single Marvel show, there's not a single Marvel movie in the top 15 ratings of any subcategory for streaming in 2022. What
Yeah,
that
I saw that.
indicates,
I saw that
yeah,
too. Sorry to cut you off, but I did see that and everything because it wasn't even low key. Falcon Winter Soldier, of course. Moon Knight, WandaVision, not even She-Hulk, obviously. That didn't
right,
even
none of
crack the
those up there.
top 15. Possibly in the lower 20s and the upper 20s, but not in the lower 15, not in the top 15s.
Right,
Okay.
and you would suspect. So if we went back in time, let's go back to 2017.
Yeah.
If we were in 2017 and they put out a Marvel streaming show, okay, let's
Mhm.
just pretend that there were streaming shows back then.
Oh yeah.
Let's pretend there was Disney Plus. If we went back in time and that were to happen, you could assume that in 2017, Marvel would have been one of the biggest shows out there, whatever it was they put out, because that is the cultural phenomenon that Marvel was. The fact that
Mhm.
we don't see any of that anymore indicates that Marvel has lost its seat at the biggest table there is when it comes to transforming culture.
Oh
People
yeah.
aren't tuning into Marvel at the same level that they once were.
Exactly. And speaking of transforming culture, let's go ahead and get right into the article that you've written and published to thatpopulist.com about the Marvels being pushed back further. So I want to go ahead and read through it and then talk about it, ask you a few questions about the things that you've meant with that you wrote about.
Go
So
for it.
all right, go ahead and pull it up.
Oh, you want me to pull it up?
Yeah.
Okay, one moment. We'll pull it up.
All right. And everyone for joining us, go ahead and if you enjoyed all the content that I put out there, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, click the bell notification so that way you'll be notified of future uploads and updates. So for the basically for the like today or yesterday, we've seen that Brie Larson shared on Twitter the poster of the upcoming film for the Marvels. All right. So we see here article written by WDW Pro that Disney is moving the Marvels to box office graveyard. In other words, that's kind of like pushing it back to a later date, okay, in efforts to go ahead and possibly make any possible changes. And I'm pretty sure that's mentioned in an article, WDW.
Yeah, and just to clarify, there are a few times throughout the year that we really consider graveyards for the box office.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might think of September because kids are all going back to school. And that's also late August. Those are considered graveyards for the box office. That doesn't mean that a movie cannot be successful. We can all go find exceptions, but it
Right.
means that studios tend to put their lesser content, and sometimes the ones that they're chasing awards, but not necessarily audiences, they put them out at those times. February is another time that often is the box office graveyard, except for the holiday weekend that we're coming up with now. And so early November is one of those graveyards. The reason that early November is a graveyard is because if you put out your content in early November, it tends to be that your box office run is slowing down at the same time that the Thanksgiving weekend hits. And what that does is it allows whichever movie just came out for the Thanksgiving weekend to explode in terms of box office sales, while your movie missed that window because you came out 2 or 3 weeks early and you've sort of sputtered out into Turkey Week.
Oh yeah, Thanksgiving. But want to go ahead and talk about this article right now where we already heard about Kevin Feige, where he said that when he broke out the news and from an interview where he was talking about how the three ladies, Carol, Kamala, and Monica, were together in the frame. To him, he said that it's like the Avengers, like the first Avengers movie, seeing all of them together in a frame. It's it's chill inducing, and it's like he's really trying hard to start to promote this movie early, only to for us to find out that it's going to be pushed back even further. Okay, so I'm gonna read the next part. It says here, this magic of Marvel is potentially falling with Autumn, Ant-Man, excuse me, and the Wasp Quantumania being ravaged in reviews. And now, go ahead and explain further about how that movie's being received before we move on.
Well, so the trajectory right now, and I haven't looked at this in a couple of hours, but the trajectory as of Friday evening is for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania to
Mhm.
either be the lowest reviewed in terms of the score it's receiving from critics Marvel movie ever, or to at least be in the bottom three.
Right.
And I suspect that once we get past the first couple of days, the audience score will also trend in that direction because I have went to the theaters and seen this movie, and I can tell you, it's really, really bad. It's easily the worst Marvel movie I've ever seen. It makes the Eternals look good. It makes Thor and Love and Thunder look like Citizen Kane. It's a very bad movie. It's
Oh no,
nonsensical for about 2 hours.
my camera fell over.
You know what? That's just an action sequence, actually, for all of the audience out there.
Oh
There
yeah.
was a moment of drama there. But Views with Hughes is okay, ladies and gentlemen. He's right there. He's back in action.
Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, it's like, and it's saying here that the Marvels will debut in early November, only 1 week before Trolls 3 and 2 weeks before 2 weeks
Wish, which
before
is
Wish.
the Pixar movie. Now that also does not fully express the competition it faces because guess what else it's going up against?
What's that?
It's also going up against the prequel to the Hunger Games, which comes out 1 week later. The reason that movie
Yeah.
is such a problem for the Marvels is, well, think about the Marvels. The Marvels is primarily a female-driven superhero flick.
Right.
Think about the Hunger Games. That's one of the biggest female-driven franchises on the planet.
Right.
So Disney has to know that they're going up against a gargantuan franchise that could eat their lunch. I don't know how that will play out. It'll depend on how the Hunger Games prequel is reviewed and how audiences respond. But you could really see the Marvels take a tumble when it comes to the box office with this new window that they've been given.
A harder tumble than my camera. But I want to move on down here to where you have it says here, where it says previously dated for July 28th, 2023. Marvel Studios released a teaser poster featuring Brie Larson's Captain Marvel. Um, and then Paris's Monica Rambeau and Imani Vellani's Miss Marvel. I'm not sure if I pronounced her name correctly, but
think you
I
got really
apologize.
close. Good job.
Yeah. But I'll be honest, I didn't. I watched WandaVision, but I didn't watch the Marvels. Okay, so I'm not going to be. I'm not also not familiar with Miss Marvel. Okay, I've read many of the Marvel comics. It's just some of them I haven't read, and that includes Miss Marvel. But that's besides the point. Miss Marvel and Monica Rambeau with the news that the film from director Nia DaCosta will now be in theaters November 10th. Now Disney's Haunted Mansion, directed by Justin Simon, now slides into July 1st, the July slot, I mean. And then from its previously announced August 11th release date. So they're pushing back the Marvels and pushing forward Haunted Mansion.
Yes, and that August release is already not good. You tend to not want to release your big movies at the end of summer, because what you do is you hit into school time. Kids start going back in the first and second weeks of August typically, and so your audience opportunities diminish.
Yep.
The prime times for the summer, you want to hit Memorial Day weekend. All of June's great. The 4th of July Independence weekend, fantastic. And then the farther you go into July, the worse your prospects become. Now, the original date they had was already kind of indicating, we're not fully confident in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, moving it off that spot and putting it into early November really says that there are issues. I don't know if they're doing reshoots. I've heard that. I don't know if they're working on the post production more, but whatever it is that caused them to move this, they moved it to a very suboptimal new date that almost certainly indicates that the movie will have less box office success than it would have originally.
Indeed. I did see Captain Marvel when it was in theaters originally, when it was first released in theaters. Were there any reshoots for that movie?
Well, Captain Marvel, the interesting thing about it is it was essentially a bait and switch technique that they did.
Yeah.
Um, had that movie not been tied to the idea that you had to go see it to understand Endgame, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that it would have done anything like what it did. One of the reasons that they didn't have to do very much in terms of reshooting with that film is because they recognized that they were going to be very successful with that strategy. And that was true. The problem was that I think it poisoned the goodwill well. And so after people went and saw Captain Marvel, then they went and saw Endgame and they were happy with Endgame, but they had that taste in their mouth from Captain Marvel where they realized that once Marvel strayed away from their uh, sort of their main storylines, that things
Mm-hmm.
could go awry. And then when
Right.
we went into phase 4, then things really went into that same mold as Captain Marvel. And I think people have been essentially turned off from Marvel. If you look at it, this is essentially hidden by the inflationary rates that have driven movie ticket prices through the roof. So this
Oh,
is
no doubt.
mostly hidden. But the reality is that audiences are going to Marvel films at about 40 to 50% the rate that they did prior to Endgame. So only, even though they're still doing well financially, if you just look at the numbers, that's because movie ticket prices have went up massively. Once you start looking at actual butts and seats, how many people
Mm-hmm.
really went and saw the movie in the cinema? That's
Yeah.
down like that's down like half, and so that's a diminishing of cultural impact.
I'm sorry. It's just I'm having a moment flashing back to my time where I was actually hyped to go to see Captain Marvel. This was before I realized that all the stuff that Marvel's putting out there was woke, and it's like I was going in there really excited, hope like high expectations, mind you, only to find out that some of the YouTubers who I watched at the time, they were right about it. Like they were right about the movie. And it's like I went into that theater from the start of it. Everything was pretty predictable. The fighting scenes, the fighting sequences, dialogue, and also Brie Larson's portrayal of Carol Danvers. Not to mention, this is the Captain Marvel that came from the later issues of the Captain Marvel comics. We wanted the original Captain Marvel. We thought we were going to get the original Captain Marvel. Did we get that WDW Pro?
No, we did not.
What did we get instead? We got actually throw in your face forced diversity. We love diversity. We want it to be natural. That's why Black Panther was successful, because the diversity in there was natural. Yeah, you got your moments here where Shuri called the guy colonizer. Yeah, I understand that, but that's nothing compared to the morbid, atrocious things that we've seen in the movies recently and in the shows, especially with Falcon and Winter Soldier.
I think one of the problems that we've seen in Marvel movies, and this may be going back to one of the great points you made earlier, where you talked about Perlmutter and Feige. You know, it
Mm-hmm.
may be that Feige needed some constraints put on him, and that when those constraints were removed, that he doesn't know what to do with his all of his creative powers that he has now. But I think what's happening in Hollywood is that we've reached a point now where diversity means something different to them than it means to perhaps you and I.
Yeah.
My idea or my ideal that I would like to live in is in a world where, uh, we're brothers and sisters, no matter the race that we belong to, and that the content of our character, the content of our hearts, is the most important thing about us. I want to treat each and every person as an individual,
Yep.
but Hollywood has seemed to drift away from that. I was making the point with somebody earlier this week that if you look back in time at some of the movies that we held as sort of cornerstone moments for uniting people who may have otherwise been divided racially, think about Remember the Titans, Denzel Washington. What a
Yep.
fantastic film out of Disney. I don't think that film would be allowed to be created today in the way that it was
Mm-mm.
made back then. They would not allow it because it presented a world in which, despite all of the ugly histories we have with racial groups being mean to one another, Remember the Titans presented that we can be friends, we can be brothers and sisters, we can love one another, and that human soul and that human dignity that lies within each one of us is so much greater and more important than anything that could separate us. And
Right.
nowadays, that's more difficult to get out of people, and it's definitely more difficult to get out of companies.
Oh, indeed. Indeed. And it's like, we see a few of these, like, okay, prime example, going back to Endgame. Going back to Endgame. We were so hyped about that movie and everything. And it also and thinking back to Endgame, I remember that goes back to what Kevin Feige said in that one podcast where he talks about entertaining people first and then put out there the messaging. He used Avengers Endgame to entertain us, but then he put that one particular scene in there. That one particular scene when they were all fighting Thanos. All the female heroes walking in that sequence going to fight him.
That's true. He is definitely about messaging, and he wants to get, I guess, his ideas of virtue into those messages that he wants to portray.
That's my guess as to why he wanted Perlmutter to be gone.
Well, yes, definitely. That definitely had a part to play with it, and I think the difficulty for Marvel now is that they're delaying a lot of their stuff because if the rest of Phase 5 is as bad as Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which I am now calling the Phase 5 dive. If this is the beginning of the Phase 5 dive, then this will poison Phase 6. And your question then has to be, how long will this go? I mean, spoiler alert to anybody who has not seen Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Spoiler alert. But if you were excited to watch Kang, the Conqueror, and this new saga that was going to involve this villain, he is defeated by ants in this movie. Giant ants who have become technologically advanced for no intelligent reason whatsoever. But the tiny little ants that you see out in your lawn, they
Hmm.
defeat Kang the Conqueror. How is it that we're supposed to be scared of that guy in the future? Maybe in the next movie he'll be defeated by moths, or perhaps by potato bugs. Maybe it'll be a vicious swarm of butterflies that takes down Kang the Conqueror next time.
I got my money on bed bugs.
Well, that'll take almost anybody down, won't it?
But it's like, okay, with Kang, the movie Kang, the movie version of Kang, Jonathan Majors, when I saw the trailers of him in it, I thought to myself and I realized this doesn't seem like a good Kang. Like
Well,
he's
the writing isn't supporting him, I'll tell you that.
oh, it's not just the writing, it's like the kind of like, well, yeah, the writing, it's like it's giving it helped him, it probably helped him to get the sense of what he should how he should portray the character, and it's not a really good enough job. Also, with the I remember months ago looking up the movie to find the production credits. At the time, I didn't see Victoria Alonso. Who did I see at the photos of the premiere of Victoria Alonso? Is she an executive producer for the movie?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure if she's an executive producer. I don't know if they gave her an EP credit, but she's at the top of Marvel essentially now, which would lend her to getting EP status on most of the projects. So that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. And it's like I guarantee you, she did have it on her hand in the movie because I guarantee you, and this is possibly speculation or rumor, or it's probably been confirmed. I guarantee you that all the things in Phase 4 and Phase 5 right now, she was behind it.
We know
She approved of it.
one thing that may be pointing towards Marvel having to do a 180. They do not seem, well, I can just go ahead and say this. They are not changing the brand name of X-Men. It will remain X-Men. And she was very much against that.
Yep,
So
I know.
that's one sign that perhaps there's at least, I don't know if it's the merchandising partners, I don't know if it's the C-suite at Disney, but somebody at least is saying to them, no, no, we're, back to that Star Wars idea again, right?
Yep.
You've got to know what's the special sauce inside your series, inside your franchise. And when it comes to X-Men, we probably shouldn't change the name of the entire franchise from X-Men to something else. That's probably a really bad idea.
Oh yeah, indeed, and I agree. And I'm trying to look up right now the production credits of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania to see if she actually had a hand in it. But it's
Well, she almost certainly has a hand in every film that Marvel makes. She's high enough in on the totem pole that she would have input on almost anything they do. I'm sorry to say that for you. It's but that is the position that she's been given. She's a significant force inside Marvel.
all right. So before we end on this note, I don't usually show my bias on my broadcasts, but I will say this: before Phase 4, I stated to myself, "I'm done. Like I'm done with this. I'm done with Marvel, the MCU. The only way that Disney can get the fans back to the MCU is by I want to say fire letting go Kevin Feige. But if he's let go, then they're going to put somebody equal or worse than him in his place. That's what I fear. Because this is Bob Iger we're talking about. The only way that Bob Iger can actually see that these things aren't working is if he actually read the numbers and not look to appease the boy. Matter of fact, how much of the company does he have a personal stake in? Like, how much does he actually own in it? Like, when it comes to like the stocks, is it majority shares more than the investing firms, or is it less?
So Disney has a vast number of stocks and uh, billions of dollars of investments, and Iger has. I think Iger has maybe two. I don't want to say off the top of my head, but he has many millions of dollars that he has in stocks with Disney. He does not have anything close to what Nelson Peltz has. Nelson Peltz being the one who was trying to
Get on
force
the
the
board.
proxy war. But
Yep.
Nelson Peltz has like $1 billion in stock. So he actually had significantly more power than Iger. And that may be why we saw many concessions out of Iger and Disney beginning to move in the direction of Peltz. Whether or not Peltz got everything is up for debate. But hey, I'll tell you one thing, we could end on a positive note, though.
What's
So I
that?
know that Marvel is struggling. That's clear. I mean, there's a neon sign now for everybody, even the slow to realize it Access Media and the Legacy News. But one franchise out there that's just getting heating up is Nintendo. I
Yep.
mean, think about them. Think about this Mario movie coming out. Are you excited for the Super Mario Brothers movie?
I've been playing Super Mario Brothers since I was 6 years old.
I think a lot of people feel that way.
To
Now,
this day, I still do Super Smash Brothers and
whoa,
Mario
whoa!
Kart.
Who's your Smash Brothers character?
Shoot, I got a couple of them. One is Donkey Kong. The
All
other
right,
one,
Donkey Kong's harder to play. That's pretty impressive. All right, who else you got?
the other one that I got would have to be. I got Donkey and I got Link. I get further
Okay,
with I get further with Donkey, but Link is good with the sword action.
you going Adult Link? You going Young Link, Toon Link? What are you doing there?
I don't know. I usually choose the young Link.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
the Young Link I think is usually ranked higher. I'm always playing. Well, I'm typically playing as either Sonic or Bowser. So those are about as different as you can get, and it's
I,
just too hard to win with Ganondorf. So
I've always thought about playing with Sonic, but it's like he spins, and I don't think I could really handle him. And it's like my days going back to Sega Genesis. It wasn't until I was in middle school, which was 2001 through 2003, that I was actually able to get a handle on him.
listen, you got to
But
get into the blast processing.
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. But WDW, I'm so glad to have you on this show. This is the longest broadcast that I've ever had done. So, WDW, I thank you for joining me. I hope to have you on for a future episode. Let me know if you're up for it. And also, I want to thank you all for stopping by, and I hope you all enjoyed this broadcast with WDW Pro as well as the inside of it. If you enjoyed what was shared in here, let us know in the comments below. Also, smash that like button. And also, if there's any corrections that need to be made, which I doubt because we have WDW Pro right here, go ahead and leave those in the comments below as well. Also, if you enjoy what I shared in the video or what WW shared in the video, go ahead and smash the like button and share it everywhere, far and wide on social media. If you enjoyed all the content I put out there, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification so that way you'll be notified of future uploads and updates. Until then, peace.